the COMSEC to read into the record the presence of all our other resource persons while the hard copy is being photocopied for myself and Senator Angara. We can proceed with the presentation. So welcome to the Senate, the DFA family. I just noticed parang konti kayo ngayon. In past hearings, so everyone's here? Okay, ready. We thank Senator Angara for joining us.
Madam Chair, sinabi daw nung staff niyo kulang yung merienda, kaya nagbawas sila ng tao.
Hindi, buti nabanggit mo yan, Senator Sunny. If you noticed, ikaw lang may dala. We don't provide for bottled water anymore, but the water is nonetheless as clean and even safer. We have water dispensers there because we bring our own jugs, and I think that's been advised to all attendees of all my hearings, not just budget hearings. We're against plastic bottles and single-use plastic bags. Hindi ka naman ipapakulong na May, that's okay. If you will recycle your plastic water bottle after. Yes, and plastic people, yes. No plastic bottles and plastic people. But that came from the words of the Foreign Secretary, okay? So, welcome, and may we dim the light so we can see the presentation. Thank you. Siguro may merienda naman tayo sa DFA family, no? For everybody. Here.
Madam Chair,
you can share it with us now. She sends me in my home her muffins.
Madam Chair, before we go to the presentation, just 3 brief points, if with your indulgence, and I'd like to greet first our secretary, our former majority leader of the Senate, Senator Alan, Secretary Alan, and of course his team. And some are familiar faces. Yusek Ariola has not only a new designation, also a new hairdo. I noticed. But welcome to the Senate. I just noticed, Madam Chair, that I wanted to put a number of points on record. The first is, in my trips abroad, I noticed that there's a passport. Meaning, like, our OFWs in Ireland, they have to go to London to get their passports renewed. Our OFWs in Saipan have to go to Guam to have their, rather than, because budget is limited, the movement of our good diplomats is limited in the DFA family. Magandang hapon po. So sana, if we could take a look at that and see if there is sufficient budget for that. Secondly, I noticed in the last year there have been a lot of foreign currency movements, and a lot of our diplomats get their allowance in foreign currency, dollars, pounds, sterling, etc., real. So maybe if there is elbow room for these foreign currency adjustments going forward, Madam Chair.
You're referring to the allowances of those based abroad?
Yes, because of foreign currency, because I know they're not exactly the most generous of allowances, if I'm not mistaken. So even the slightest change in the forex could impact on their lifestyles, and could impact on what type of lives their families lead, their children, etc.
In fact, there should be a regular review of that.
And the third is, Madam Chair, we just had a tax hearing, and a big issue there was indexation of wages, meaning because our taxes have not been indexed to inflation for the last 2 decades, kumbaga mababa na yung sweldo, malaki pa rin yung porsyento ng tax. So I'm worried there might be a similar situation with respect to our diplomats. I'm sure Secretary Alan is on top of it, but just to flag it, yung issue dun sa allowances nila baka hindi napepeg sa inflation, and if a host country has experienced some kind of dramatic inflation, it should also be taken into consideration perhaps in the factoring of the allowances. That's all I wanted to say, Madam Chair. I know you will find a solution. I know Secretary Allen will suggest a solution. Thank you, Your Honor, Madam Chair.
We take note of those, and I think that's all very valid. In fact, the review of the wages and allowances of all our DFA staff abroad should be reviewed every year. I'm not sure when the last adjustment was. I think that was more than 3 years ago. And I hope in their budget proposal, it already includes the adjustments of those living overseas. And the mobile passports, I hope I will see that in the presentation, in the proposal. Yes, we should make our DFA reach out to our overseas Filipinos. And your third was The
The forex impact.
The forex impact, yes. Okay. Thank you, Senator Angara.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes. May we request that the presence of everyone be read into the record, please?
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. We would like to acknowledge the presence of Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano, Undersecretary Jose Luis Montales, Undersecretary Sara Ariola, Undersecretary Manuel Antonio Tihanki, Secretary General Laila Ramos Shahani, and Director General Claro Cristobal.
May we request Secretary Alan, hindi ako sanay, Secretary, okay, Alan, the DFA budget.
Madam Chair, first of all, thank you very much for the very, very warm welcome and the hospitality. And truly, it's a big blessing to be on this side. Have coming and budget satisfaction of the legislative branch. Madam Chair, with your permission, presentation the concern as for mobile passports. So definitely there's a problem, but ASEC Simon Franca and USEC Joel Montales has quietly been working on it, and there are three major reforms aside from the other things that we're doing. So at no cost to the government, we are getting more data capture machines, including mobile, for abroad and for the Philippines. So we will have 5 trucks, which will have 4 to 8 machines inside, which we can bring in the countryside. And instead of every Saturday lang yung mobile passporting, we can do it every day. Secondly, abroad, so more and more they're asking for a laptop and mobile rather than a desktop. Para makatipid din sa pamasahe at oras yung mga kababayan natin. So we will go to them instead of them going to us. Thirdly, the appointment system is being addressed today. In fact, 20,000 names have been removed from the list, and there's been some major reforms. We're just doing it quietly. But may I mention that for OFWs, for single parents, for senior citizens, for persons with disabilities, they don't have to get an appointment. In any consular office around the world and in the Philippines, they can just walk in. Unfortunately, we haven't been as good in announcing this, so we're taking some measures. So let me just assure the Senate that at minimal cost, we'll be able to resolve the long lines of the passport. And right now, the data capture is being done all over again because of some problems in the past. They basically lost the data. But with the data that's captured now, and then the 10-year passport, and may I thank the Senate and the House for passing that and the President, in their next renewal 10 years from now, probably non-appearance with, e-payment and then non-appearance, or it will be mailed to them. So please bear with us in the next month or so, and we expect massive improvement on that matter, Madam Chair.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I hope also that the DFA has sorted out the issue that arose not during your time, I think a year ago or 2 years ago, on lost passports which are not lost. I actually had the problem while entering the United Kingdom in London, where I was barred from entering because my passport through the Interpol was deemed lost, and they said it was the information from our DFA. I brought this to the attention of a DFA. I had to call the Philippine Embassy, but I was held in immigration because of that. And whenever I travel now, I have to have that letter from the DFA saying that mine indeed, which has a valid UK, US, and EU visa, Schengen, is not lost passport. And the DFA then admitted that there were some passports which were inadvertently included in the lost passport list which were not actually lost. So, ang hiling ko lang po sa DFA, suriin natin yung listahan because it also happened to Congressman Carlo Nograles, nga pala yung dalawang chairman ng finance. I think Kong Carlo was reverted back to the Philippines while entering New York. He could not enter. Buting ako, napapasok pa ako after pleading. They held me for 1 hour. If I think it's Kong Carlo, it also happened to him or another congressman manager because he was also, his passport was with a valid US visa was also included in the lost passport list. I don't know how that happened. Yes.
Wala naman ho kayong request na dininay ng DFA.
Hindi.
Baka as the chairman of the Appropriations Committee.
This happened, I think, how long ago was actually? 2 years ago? Last year. You remember? Yes, because I sought your help. So now, I always have to have that letter with my passport when I enter Europe, or whatever, that my passport is not lost. Yun lang. We just have to make sure that no such mistakes happen. I don't know if it's a computer issue. And they said it was Interpol, so I got scared. Nagkamali ang ating DFA in including my passport and many others into the list of lost ones, and it was not lost.
Madam Chair, will take note
It can
of
cause
that.
inconvenience. Buti na lang, senador ako, makakatawag ako sa embassy, paano na yun pag OFW, tapos itatabi na lang doon, maaring ikulong, parang overnight, maaring ipabalik sa port na pinanggalingan niya.
Ma'am, as far as consular services is concerned, whether here or abroad, there are still some complaints. And we're doing some reforms to address it. But one of that is the use of social media. So all of our posts and our home office now has Facebook, and with the budget we're going to present, we're going to develop an app so that you can easily contact the DFA, and hopefully maybe not next year but the year after, we can have chief communication officers in each post so that the communication will be easier. But we do admit that there are some problems, no, not only with the passport but also with some consular services that we're dealing with now.
Thank you.
Yeah. With your permission, Madam Chair,
Proceed.
maybe this will take 5 to 10 minutes. What we did is we divided the budget into 2 parts. First is just the usual questions about President Duterte's foreign policy. And then for the budget, we just have 4 slides. So we'll take a total maybe of 10 to 15 minutes with your permission. So first, Madam Chair, is the consistent question or persistent question: what is President Duterte's foreign policy? So allow us to quote from him himself. President Duterte said on September 10, 2016, upon his arrival in the Davao International Airport, that we will observe and insist, I repeat, insist, on the time-honored principle of sovereign equality, non-interference, and commitment to peaceful settlement of dispute to best serve our people and protect the interests of our country. It does not offend anyone, but it sends a message that we have every right to pursue an independent foreign policy without interference. So the DFA foreign policy direction is to pursue an independent foreign policy where the interests of our people and their desire for a comfortable and productive life are paramount, strengthen ties with old allies, and engage new partner nations. And third, our job is to build, bridge, and build. Independent policy, Madam Chair, is not hard to define because the Constitution itself gives us some guidelines. The state shall pursue an independent foreign policy. In its relation with other states, the paramount consideration shall be national sovereignty, territorial integrity, national interest, and right to self-determination. On that note, may we assure the Senate, especially the Committee on Finance, that the Philippines is not giving up on, it's not giving a single inch of its territory or sovereignty rights. We are fighting for it. We are on top of our claims. We are taking all diplomatic actions that are needed. Having said that, there is a balance between national sovereignty, territorial integrity, national interest, and right to self-determination. So without compromising national sovereignty and territorial integrity, the DFA is at the forefront of pushing for our national interest here and in all parts of the world. Republic Act 7157 gives a narration of DFA's main mandate: preservation and enhancement of national security, promotion and attainment of economic security, and protection of the rights and promotion of welfare of the welfare of overseas Filipinos. Actually, Madam Chair, the President's direction to us is not only the welfare but also the convenience and comfort of our Filipinos abroad, whether they're Filipino workers or they're PhilAms or they're migrants or second, third generation Filipinos abroad. So what has been done? There has been 15 official and state visits. There's been 36 agreements on trade and investment, 17 bilateral agreements. In 2016, 16,352 OFWs in distress were assisted. 348 victims of human trafficking were assisted in 2016. 9,094 OFWs distressed assisted from January to July 2017. Assisted walk-in clients, 5,633. Then beneficiaries of the Legal Assistance Fund, 278. And beneficiaries of the Legal Assistance Fund from January to July only of this year, 270. So far, 4 Filipinos have been spared on death row, and we continue to monitor and continue to actively seek means to protect our Filipinos, not only in death row, but anyone facing legal challenges. 5 Filipino seafarers were released from 4 years of captivity by Somali pirates. 8,428 overseas Filipinos were repatriated from Saudi Arabia between April to June of this year. 3,110,000 passports were issued in 2016. From January to June this year, 2.1 million passports were issued. 767,000 documents have been authenticated. 424,000 documents authenticated in 2017. 637,000 visas issued, and then 433 visas issued in 2017. 56,808 civil registry reports and 47,000 civil registry reports. We included this, Madam Chair, because we were not given a budget for the MOE or for the materials that are needed for some of our consular services, which will go later. Madam Chair, from 2010 to 2016, you will see in the next chart from Bangko Sentral the flow of foreign direct investments, and from 6 billion we're now up to 8 billion US dollars. These achievements were not done by DFA alone. It was with many departments, but it's also upon the initiative of our President with his independent foreign policy. International arrivals, tourists, were at 5.9 million, or almost 6 million. If you look at the annual total net foreign direct investment, in 2016 we hit 8 billion. From January to May alone, we are already at 3 billion. So hopefully the trend will continue. The Philippines consistently increased the flow of FDI over the past years. The total FDI valued at 7.9 billion in 2016 increased by 41% compared with its amount in 2015. So the past administration did a good job, but I think this present administration is also doing a good job, or will do a great job. To show you the results of the initiatives of the President, the number of Chinese tourists visiting the country has gone up from 190,000 in 2015 to 340,000 in 2016. It's now 454,000 in 2017 for the same period, which is only the first semester. This is very important to the country because for every 2 tourists, 1 job is created. And Chinese tourists are known to spend about an average of $1,000 on shopping alone, not including board and lodging. Of course, Madam Chair, the initiatives towards the Korean, Japanese, European, US, and ASEAN tourism continues. But I just mentioned Chinese in particular because of the initiatives of the President to really get more Chinese tourists to come. There are certain milestones, Madam Chair, that the DFA was part of, like the hosting of the 18th Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership RCEP Trade Negotiation Committee, meeting with trade officials of the ASEAN, President Duterte's attending the 24th APEC meeting. The Philippines, through its chairmanship, ASEAN adopted the BIMP IAGA Vision 2025 and launched the ASEAN RORO Sea Linkage Route, including Davao General Santos, Bitung ASEAN RORO route. Philippines formally acceded to the Paris Agreement. Thank you for the chairman for consistently following this up with the Office of the President and actually sponsoring it on the floor. Extended the validity of a passport from 5 to 10 years, which was done by Congress. Undertook a quality management system, QMS, and obtained ISO 9001-2008 certification for its authentication service on January 6, 2017. Hosted ASEAN Ministers meeting. Inked 875 million worth of business deals with Russia, 925 million during the visits in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Qatar. Renewed relations with China, which led to $24 billion worth of assistance, investment, and commercial loans commitments. Received commitment from Japan for 1 trillion yen, or $9 billion of assistance, but that has now gone up to 14 billion. To give you, Madam Chair, a sense of comparison with Japan, for example, President Aquino's first year, 70 billion was committed to the Philippines. In President Duterte's first year, 700 billion pesos has been committed to the Philippines. 500 million worth of military equipment and small arms have also been donated by China to the Philippines. 362 million assistance to support poverty alleviation relief efforts in Mindanao. These are from different countries, Madam Chair. To the Philippines chairmanship, ASEAN made progress in the negotiations for the framework of the Code of Conduct in the South China Sea, and we're now at the substantive part of the Code of Conduct, and we're confident that we will move forward on this. Strengthen the regional cooperation in dealing with terrorism, violent extremism, and other transnational crimes. There's a lot of information sharing and cooperation being done. The foreign ministers of Indonesia and Malaysia brought to the Philippines their chief of police and chief of military to have a trilateral conference with the Philippines, and they contributed a lot, taught us a lot, and shared on how to fight extremism in the Philippines. Adopted the ASEAN Convention Against Trafficking in Persons, especially women and children. Then the DFA actively pursued the Philippines' advocacy on the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea, pushing for the full and effective implementation of the Declaration of Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea, DOC. Therefore, now there's much more stability, and so far the claimants have not been going to uninhabited islands to further build or to inhabit the uninhabited features in the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea. DFA actually, Madam Chair, ranked number 6 among the government's top revenue generating agencies. I think this was prepared for Senator Angara, being the chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means. We actually collected 1.24 billion in yearly collections. And actually, if our PS or personal services is added, I personally witnessed how our consulate in Osaka, when they went out, I think they made 1 million yen in one day, when not only the mobile passport, but when they do the mobile consular services. So there's a lot of services that we can provide if we go to our people, but at the same time, ang OFWs naman natin always willing to contribute, nagbabayad naman sila, no? So what is provided under the NEP 2018? We submitted the Tier 1, 13.77 billion, and the Tier 2, 5.8 billion. Then we have 3 attached agencies, the Foreign Service Institute, the Technical Cooperation Council of the Philippines, and UNESCO, the National Commission of the Philippines. So the total budget will be, Foreign Service Institute gets 64.93 million, 4.6 million for the Technical Cooperation Council, and UNESCO, National Commission of the Philippines. We do know that the chair, aside from being a champion of the environment and climate change, is also a champion of the culture and arts. And we do actually have cultural diplomacy, and we actually do some projects abroad and teaching, but the budget is very low. It's below $3 million, about 15 million pesos. So these are two poorer countries where the Philippines can actually be a big brother. Madam Chair, and this is almost the last slide. Next slide, please. Just to give the Senate a comparison, our budget, the Department of Foreign Affairs, is 0.52% or less than 1% of the total proposed national budget. But on the right side, as I said, with the other departments, and of course this is through the President's personal and official diplomacy. Personal, what I mean is one-on-one talks with the leaders of these countries. 24 billion worth of assistance is coming from, and investment and commercial loans from China. 14 billion, this has to be updated, from Japan. Russia has offered to buy from us $2.5 billion worth of agricultural supplies and products, and has also committed $7.5 billion in possible infrastructure and transportation projects. So just to give you a comparison, Madam Chair, that the more resources we're allowed, especially in our post abroad, we can do a better job. For example, in Russia, you know, all of the documents have to be translated, and the Russians are very formal and should be so. So all of these agreements have to be done very well. And how many Russian speaking do we have in Russia now? One or two lang, no?
We have 4 translations.
4 here in Moscow, no? So we have 4 translators in Moscow, but you can imagine Filipino and local hires, no? Local Russians, and then we have 1 or 2 officers that can speak Russian. But my point, Madam Chair, is that
Assure that translations are accurate.
we have a Russian-speaking
Filipino.
Then
Can
now
validate.
with better relations, tinutulungan din tayo ng Russians. But the point is, Madam Chair, let's say infrastructure. The earlier you get it, the cheaper it is, because of inflation and other costs. So there are a lot of things we can do with Japan, China, and Russia if we augment the personnel there. The problem is we are opening new posts as proposed by the DFA and approved by DBM, but even that does not include the personal services. No? So what do we need? Madam Chair, with your permission, on the technical side, I'll turn over to Assistant Secretary Ethel Balatbat, who's Office of Fiscal and Management Services, with your permission. It's just
Thank
last
you.
4 slides with her.
Thank you, Secretary Cayetano. Please proceed, Director Balatbat.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. We would like to highlight some of the items that are still needed by our department. Maybe from this slide, may I just invite attention to the requirements for our Philippine Consulate General in Calgary. We are hoping that it could be provided a budget of 55 million additional for personnel services requirements. Madam Chair, this post was not included in the budget of the DFA for 2017, and we have been pushing for its inclusion in 2018, although it had already been opened, Madam Chair.
That's a consulate.
Yes, Madam Chair.
It's a newly opened consulate. It was one of the consulates closed before, 5 years ago, and it's newly opened.
It's newly opened, Madam Chair.
Existing,
Yes, Madam
but
Chair.
we don't have personnel.
We have, but we have been getting the budget for Calgary from savings, from the department savings. There is no new money allocated for this post. So for 2018, this is what we are requesting, Madam Chair. for the personal services alone. In the next slide,
Let me just add on that. Madam Chair, just to give you a point of view from Calgary, no? They issued 13,444 passports, issued 89 travel documents. They had 6,315 notarials and civil registration 307. So the money actually paid by the Filipinos abroad or that came in is $1 million US. So actually, if this is granted to us, it's basically revenue neutral. No? So the Assistant Secretary uses the word savings loosely, but actually, we're forced to have some savings to get that, to put it there. Go ahead.
How long has this office been open, the consulate?
it was opened, Madam Chair, in April 2016.
Bagong-bago. How many people do we have?
Consul General plus 6 persons, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
But this request is for 10 regular employees because the DFA would like to beef up the manpower complement in Calgary.
10 in additional to the 6.
Yes, Madam
And
Chair.
the 10 will be organic DFA, not local hires.
Some will be local hires, some will be organic to the department.
The 55 million is only for salary.
Yes,
Only
Madam
for
Chair.
personnel.
Salaries and allowances, Madam Chair. It does not yet include the operating expenses. For the operating expenses, they're in the next slide, I believe. So for Calgary, again, we are requesting that there be funding for its MOE of 16.7 million. That's in the remarks section. We have proposed this, but we were not accommodated. We also are requesting, Madam Chair, funding for supplies and materials for the Office of Consular Affairs. This would be for authentication services and visa supplies. We are also hoping that we shall be provided resources for the additional MOE for our home office. These will be for example, expenses related to the visits of foreign dignitaries, activities such as regional consultation meetings, and some rental of equipment and vehicles.
Sir, can I just emphasize, Madam Chair, the OCA supplies, these are accountable forms. So actually you can't just buy it or you can't mass produce it. So right now we're getting the money from the passport revolving fund just so that hindi maubusan ng papel or ng forms. But when you get it from the passport revolving fund, hindi naman namin magamit ngayon para mapaganda yung services sa passport as we discussed at the start. So the request is kahit partial nung amount so that we can produce these forms through the GA.
How many consulates do we have in Canada?
An embassy and 3 consulates.
Our embassy is in Ottawa, and our consulates are in what cities? Toronto, Vancouver, and the third one is Calgary. Thank you. And this is the most recently opened. In your present year's...
Madam Chair, the supplies is for the whole world, for Philippines and abroad. The OCA supplies, yes. It's not only for Calgary. Yeah, no. Worldwide, sorry. Sorry for that, Madam Chair. Yes.
So just to clarify, we have an embassy and we have 3 consulates, including Calgary, which is the recently opened one. And we have personnel in all, and you need additional personnel of 10 in Calgary. Understood. And there are other areas where, how many posts were closed? Can you refresh my memory? It was Senator Drilon, I remember, at the time, chairing There
10, Madam Chair.
There were
10.
10 posts. And from what I understand, Calgary is not one of those because this is a new one. So of the 10, do you also have proposals to reopen some posts? I understand that there is a request to reopen some posts. Who was it who said? Is it Frankfurt?
And Stockholm.
Was it Sweden? Who was the ambassador?
Sir, ang funding for Houston.
No, where? What country? Sweden.
Yes. We were only given funding for Copenhagen and Houston, but even that did not include personal services.
Thank you. Ito, mga sinara. Okay, I have the list of those closed. Copenhagen was never closed because we never had, is it? It's a new one. Just a minute. Yes. So Stockholm was closed, and the ambassador of Sweden to the Philippines met with me, hoping that the Stockholm embassy, did we have an embassy or a consulate? An embassy would be opened. I wonder if first I leave it to the judgment of the secretary, if you think that the Stockholm embassy should be reopened. Second, I'm just conveying to you the message of the Swedish ambassador to the Philippines. Second, is it in the proposed NEP for 2018 of the Stockholm embassy, or it's not included? Wala, no? From what I see, you only have Houston. There's also a suggestion that Barcelona and Frankfurt,
Yes.
the consular offices in Frankfurt and in Barcelona be open.
What we actually submitted, ma'am, we submitted 6. Of the 6, 2 were put in the budget, but in both cases without personal services.
How can we operate it?
So that's our problem, Madam Chair, because what will happen is we'll have to give them people from other posts, and because of we're highly active now with the diplomacy and economic diplomacy. So instead of adding to those who are asking us for more people, we'll actually be subtracting and sending it there.
May it just be clarified which posts are already in your budget to be reopened?
Houston and Copenhagen.
These are new posts because
new posts.
they are not in the closed posts.
Yes.
So Houston, Texas is a consulate, and you have the budget for no
MOE.
personnel, MOE,
Yes.
but no personal services.
MOE and capital outlay,
And
Madam
capital
Chair,
outlay.
but no personal services.
You're renting, I would assume, no?
Yes.
We don't have a
Yes.
property there. So Houston, and the other one is
Copenhagen.
Copenhagen, which is a new post.
Yes.
That's an embassy in Copenhagen. So you have capital outlay, but no personnel again
Yes.
in MOE, and that means you are expected to just transfer, cross-post some of your personnel. And there's a request for Stockholm, at least insofar as the Swedish government is concerned. Someone intervened and then talked to me about Frankfurt. And Barcelona, I think it was Ambassador Le Villiers requesting for Barcelona because he mentioned about an honorary consul who was holding office in our consulate, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
But I don't
Madam
think I can
Chair.
reopen, it's within my budgetary power to reopen all of those closed.
Yes.
But I leave it to the judgment of the secretary to prioritize what to amend in our budget.
Madam Chair, what happened actually is when I was appointed and took my oath on May 18, the Tier 1 and Tier 2 was already submitted. So we asked for reconsideration in the Tier 2, and they prioritized the money for the OFWs. Then BBN advised us to work it out with Congress. So actually we're open to discussing with the committee the priorities. So if we're given an amount, we will tell you which. Then there are bases for it. For example, Houston, why Houston? It's home to 140,678 Filipinos, but it will actually serve the needs of 183,000 Filipinos including those from Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. So we can also do the same with those that were closed and those open. What's the strategic importance? How many Filipinos are there? Are there any economic activities that the Philippines wants to do with that country?
That would be very helpful. So you have Houston and you have Calgary. If you could kindly please include Stockholm, only because it was brought to my attention. And if you
Frankfurt.
think, and Frankfurt, just for a consulate, and Barcelona. I'm not saying that the others are not priorities, but this was brought to my attention. And just please justify it. And if you don't agree and think it should remain closed, then let's really put our funds where it's needed more.
Madam Chair, the three that you mentioned, we agree with.
Actually agree.
Yes.
And we will find the funds for it.
Thank you very much.
So,
We will use the funds that you will find.
yes.
Madam Chair.
So, i-summarize natin. Houston, what was the other, and Copenhagen. So it would be Houston, Copenhagen, Barcelona, Frankfurt, and Stockholm. Stockholm, I'm not sure. Marami bang Pilipino in the Nordic countries?
3,000 Filipinos. But there are other reasons for it.
Could be economic.
Yes.
Stockholm, we projected for 2019, and then Frankfurt.
Yes. Actually, Madam Chair, because of the limited funds, we actually have the priorities 2018, 2019, 2020, but there's a backlog because let's say for 2018 we proposed 5, but 2 got approved. And the request of the DFA is that whatever is approved will have personal services. So we'd rather have less posts but with complete staffing rather than more posts, then we will not have the staff. So we'll submit to you with the amounts, Madam Chair, then the justification.
That would be helpful. In the post that we mentioned, the staffing, of course, capital outlay, and the MOE, and the personal services. Para naman kompleto tayo. Sige, just on those areas we mentioned first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair and Mr. Secretary. For the regular MOE for our foreign service posts, we are hoping we shall be provided funding. A big chunk of the MOE requirements of our posts comes from their rental expenses. Because we don't own all our chanceries, Madam Chair, so the rental expenses have gone up, and if we are provided funding support, it will be very helpful to our foreign service posts. It's also to support their regular activities and operations. Next slide. This is just to show that we also need some additional capital outlay for the Home Office and for the Foreign Service posts. For the capital outlay, Madam Chair, it's just upgrading of ICT equipment and replacement for fully depreciated existing equipment, furniture, and fixtures. As for the Home Office,
Yes, before you proceed, no, because these are additional requests, but you actually have 3.2 billion from 2016. This is before the time of Secretary Cayetano, just so that he also knows the money that you have. You have continuing appropriations from last year's budget that you need to spend by December, and that's quite a big amount. That's 3.2 billion. I don't have the breakdown, which is capital outlay. You need to spend that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the
Please proceed.
1.2 billion is for the building fund. And the direction, we're now checking if we can use it locally because of the time constraint this year. But in my conversations with many foreign ministers around the world, they're inclined to buy property. Of course, there's reciprocal arrangement, because usually the areas for diplomatic missions are very expensive areas, or if not, with developing countries in 5, 10, 15 years, double, triple, times 5 yung halaga. So these other countries are looking at it as an investment. For the retrofitting, Madam Chair, there's 1.3 building. As you know, we're using the old ADB building, and we were told that we only have a few more months or a year.
Oh, 2 years. It's 48 years.
Well, if you ask,
It's 48 years old.
it's 48 years old. So we were told that we should move out in a few months, but if you ask ASEC, she wants to move out tomorrow, because when there's an earthquake, nararamdaman mo na. So we have 1.3 billion for retrofitting, but since 1.3 billion can actually build already a building, we have a meeting on the 23rd next week to decide, and we'll tell you, whether, Madam Chair, whether...
Are you renting the DFA? No.
No, we're now at we have our own building now.
This is your own building, yes.
But we only have a few more months because it has to be retrofitted. Hindi na stable yung structure.
You're actually asked to move out because it's a dangerous structure?
If we retrofit, we still have to move out for 2 years. If we build, we have to still move out for 2 years. So we'll...
Is this built for the DFA then? No.
ADB.
Oh, I see.
ADB. Unless the ADB or AIB wants to build us a new building. So the BCD is actually offering...
So it has been assessed?
Yes.
It has been assessed?
Before we...
And
Actually,
it
the last
needs
2 years,
retrofitting?
yes. That's why the fund has been there, because... When was it?
It was 2012, sir. 2012.
As far as 2012, we are already told. So,
Yeah,
but we'll make
I
a decision
remember I've
by
been
next
handling
week.
your budget since 2013, and I know that building fund
Ano pa?
for this
2.6
DFA.
billion yan. So between the two, Madam Chair, that's
I don't
already...
understand. I'll just check. That building fund is still there? It must have reverted already if it was not used. The 1 billion building fund.
That's for this year. Magkano yung this year?
Ano yun? Acquisition of foreign properties.
For acquisition of foreign properties for this year is 1.19
Yeah.
billion.
Madam Chair, 1.19 billion is for this year for acquisition of foreign properties. We're checking where did we get the amount and what areas are we targeting.
So you have a 1.3 building fund. New properties abroad and in the Philippines. So
Yes.
that's allowed. Yes. You're actually going to use that for your new office in the
Offices or
Philippines.
consular offices, yes. But we haven't gotten, there's an EO pending that will allow us to open new consular offices, because even if we expand the present one, people have to go to us rather than us going to the people sa passports. No? So for example, Madam Chair, in Davao, we're already processing 400 a day, pero sobra pa rin hong haba ng pila, in mga 1 month pa rin yung appointment. In Metro Manila, we're doing, sa Asiana, we're doing 2,000 ba? More or less.
Almost
We're doing almost 2,000, and we plan to increase to 3,300. But in the Asiana, you'd ask people where they came from. It's Cavite, may Quezon.
But you mentioned
Laguna.
about that, Secretary Allen. There's also request to open a passport office in Laguna, in the province of Laguna.
We submitted a request for Calamba because we also looked where there are a lot of OFWs, so that it's easy for them and their families to renew their passports. The other item, Madam Chair, is the assistance to nationals, 400 million. I think we only spent maybe 100 million. It's because the guidelines was a little bit restrictive, and we were handling it very conservative in the past. But under the instructions of the President, and given the needs of our OFWs, especially the undocumented and those with problems, no, we are revising the guidelines, and will be more proactive in helping Filipinos abroad.
Before we proceed to the assistance to nationals, can I just clarify the passport issue? So I'm glad that you're opening an office in Laguna. But I'm not certain whether this is accurate, that to make an appointment, is it still online appointment? To make an appointment online, it says here that the soonest you can get is November 7 if your appointment as of today.
Yes, Madam Chair, in Asiana.
How
But
do
we've been instituting reforms, Your Honor, and we've been opening up additional slots. For example, for August and September alone, we're able to open around 30,000 additional slots. No?
Let's give it. Madam Chair, I'll give you a background with your permission. So I think the APO who won the contract, and we separated the legal issue from their performance issue. They said that they can print about 18 to 20,000 a day. They're only printing 14,000 a day when I came in. So we asked them what do they need, and they said more machines, more people, more consular offices. So having said that, Madam Chair, we did not stop there. ASEC Frank and USEC Joel as a couple of reforms sa Asiana. So from 2,000 naging 3,000 na. And then we found a lot of bogus of people putting their names. In Facebook, we even found for sale slots for DFA na 1,500. We don't know if it's active or hindi. The past, we just blocked it, but now we're going to prosecute if people we will make money out of appointments. No? So the aim, Madam Chair, is to get to a point where you can get an appointment in a week or so. But there are also a lot of no-shows, so we also have to put a penalty. We are not using the e-payment yet, but we're going to do that soon. And then we noticed that a lot of those who are qualified for the courtesy lane, express lane, do not know that they are. So for example, OFWs. Some OFWs still took appointments, but they don't need to do so because kulang ng mga signs. The other thing, Madam Chair, is that before last week, and thank you to the different OFW groups and NGOs, before the definition of OFWs are only the returning ones. So the ones na may kontrata na ngayon who needs a passport to leave, hindi pa sila considered OFW. So pipila pa sila 2-3 months. No? And all of this happened because we have a 15% increase in the demand for passports. Combination of OFWs, tourism, budget airlines. So about 15 million people have passports out of the 105 million Filipinos. There's a surge na hindi binentayan over the years, and then because they lost the data in the past, we have to do it all over again, the data. So the House of Representatives, the Committee on Foreign Affairs actually went abroad to look at modern passports from the quality to the technology, and has advised us to form a technical working group to see how we can improve all aspects of it. No? Even the chip in the so far our report is that the security measures are how do you put it, acceptable or up to date?
Yes.
Up to date. But there are a lot of new technologies and new features that we can actually look into. So we committed to the House of Representatives to look into it. No?
Madam Chair, we were able to increase the number of appointments through the appointment system from 1,900 to 3,300. That's 73.6% in Asiana alone. And then the show-up rate, we were able to increase it from 760 to 1,848 or 143% because of the reforms that we've been doing. One of which is the, because we added we added machines, 9 of them, and then manpower, about 50 so far. So this added manpower and machines contributed to the increase in the appointment slots being offered to the public.
So the November appointment online can actually be much earlier.
Yeah, we've been moving up the appointments. In fact, on August 25, we will open additional slots for September. And these slots would number to maybe several thousands.
We're calling them
Yes, and we've been calling people who have later appointments so that they can avail of the earlier appointment slots.
Madam Chair, the problem in all of this is the 700 people we're using for that do not have plantilla or not even contractual DFA. You know, they're getting the money from the passport revolving fund. So we asked the DBM kung hindi kaya yung buong 700 kahit na 200 or 300 muna this year para magamit namin. So even if APO keeps giving us more machines, may problema kami sa personnel. So our request
job
is...
order, what do you call that? Not contractual? Job order?
Contract of service. Contract of service.
Job order.
No.
Yeah.
Not
They're contractual, ma'am, but not paid through the NEP, but through the GAA, but paid through the revolving
From
fund.
the
of
revolving
passport.
fund?
Yes.
Oh, so the internally generated income of DFA through the passports, it is what is used to pay. Is that allowed?
It's allowed, but instead of augmenting, it's now the main fund. So supposedly this fund would help us add.
But that's similar to the Bureau of Immigration, where they were using the internally generated funds of the...
But Madam Chair, the difference is this one was for overtime. For
but
us,
this is for down.
yeah. Here it's specifically provided in the Passport Act that it can be used for that. But for example, some of our employees are getting 12,000, 11,000 net. So pamasahe pa lang.
We don't have, DFA does not have plantilla positions, enough plantilla positions to facilitate in the passport division.
Yes. Maybe you can show the slide of our request.
Can
and
you,
then-
you've requested DBM to approve your
Nasaan
plantilla
yung-
positions.
The red one adjustment for, saan ba? Nasaan yung ano?
So these people receiving 12,000 a month, what kind of benefits do they,
No, they do get, di ba they have PhilHealth?
are they considered government employees?
Yes.
No. Ano yun? May GI, meron silang PhilHealth, SSS, GSIS.
Yung contractual, Madam Chair, may benefits, pero yung contract of service, wala.
Contract of service?
We
or
have
contractual?
both, di ba?
Both.
700 are contractual. Yeah. With benefits yun.
It's been like this from the beginning? That we don't have organic DFA personnel for
Pero
passports?
the last few years, it's...
we were not able to.
Yes. It's always
We were
been
not
like
able
this,
to
but the
add to
last
the
few
pressure,
years
yeah.
with the surge of demand for
Understood.
the passports.
Understood. Okay. So no need to show me that, I understand. But as long as you have a pending request in DBM for the opening of more plantilla positions, maybe not the whole 700, but part of it, so that that can be annually provided for in your budget. Now, the assistance to nationals, I think you have a 1 billion in your NEP already. Yes. May we know how, that's a welcome addition to your budget, and that's already in your NEP. So how can it actually, how will it be used as opposed to the legal assistance fund for overseas Filipinos?
Madam Chair, we are now amending the guidelines, but from the most simple of a lack of personnel that will handle cases, then also for example, translators also. And then, to give an example is when I was in Dubai, may 10 na pinauwi, ATN paid for their ticket from Manila to Davao. But taga North Cotabato siya, so wala siyang pamasahe ng to North Cotabato. So by amending that, we'll be able to give them that. Some of them going home have stopovers of 5-7 hours, wala man lang meal. In Malaysia, when Asek Malaya was ambassador, he had a project in Sabah. Since the situation there is quite different, so there are a lot of Filipino children who were not going to school. So nagtayo siya ng ALS. But it's actually through funding through your committee and Senator Escudero, and then through the community funds. But this is a type of assistance to national. No? So then the medical and everything. So what we're actually doing is talking to all the NGOs. Then USEC Sara actually just came from a
17 days.
17 days in the Middle East, since 1/3 of our OFWs are there, and she can tell you about a couple of experiences, including yung sa bahay ng mga babae.
The shelters.
The shelters, for example, Madam Chair, it's
Shelters funded by the assistance to national funds, and are the shelters, I guess, they're temporary under the responsibility of the embassy or the consulate? How is it?
The shelters, Madam Chair, are OWA owned, but then we share in the payment for the food and the needs of the wards. However, they are inadequate because they only get runaways that have been that go to them within 48 hours. So those who have been out more than 48 hours, they cannot accommodate them. So in other instances, if you've been going around, some of the women get raped. If they ride taxis, they get raped. If somebody offers them a ride, they get raped and abused. So we have, there's really a lack of shelters in the Middle East. And also the problem with the children, because the children that are born out of wedlock are not recognized. So we have to bring them home also. And the women are automatically violating the immorality laws, so they have to go to jail with the children. So, or hide the whole time. So the children don't get education, they don't get health benefits. So we've been trying to negotiate with the governments, but it's mandatory that they have to serve at least 3 to 6 months in prison with their children. And that's one of the difficulties that we've found. But we really have lack of shelters. Since very few Filipinos speak Arabic, we really need a lot of Arabic-speaking interpreters. And since all the decisions are in Arabic, and most of the time, if someone runs away, the employer would file a police case. So they're always charged with theft. So it's always unahan eh. So the OFWs cannot leave because they are not given clearance from their employers. So those are the difficulties that we're facing. That's why the shelters would usually have 100 to 200 women at one time. But every time there's someone who goes home, they are just being replaced. So, and there's really a lack of shelters in all posts there.
But with your additional funds given by the President in your NEP, this 1 billion can actually be used for adequate shelters in those
we're confident,
hazard areas?
together with Secretary Bello and Dole, the real Dole, Madam Chair.
The pineapple.
Not the pineapple.
Yes. Terrible.
We're very confident that we can do much more. We really can't calculate how much is needed because it was always the chicken or the egg. Pag inubos mo yung fund, baka wala na. Pag masyadong conservative, hindi tulungan. But Madam Chair, may I inform this committee that there's an accompanying fund there, yung LAF. And later on, I will request you to change the name dahil LAF tapos legal assistant, and many of this is used for death row or for mga serious cases, no? Tapos pag tinanong doon, saan kukunin yung pondo sa LAF? But anyway, the LAF was nag-add ng 100 million. So for example, in Hong Kong now, our congen there who's confirmed, who's going to be our ambassador to Lebanon, does a lot of proactive legal seminars with NGOs there. So we're also revising the guidelines of LAF to accompany the ATN. So rather than parating pag may problema na, we'll try to keep them out of trouble. The same thing, for example, sa US, Madam Chair. You know, for every Filipino that has a path to citizenship or at the very least to become an immigrant, nakakatulong sa pamilya. But we don't have, or if we have very few yung retainers, immigration lawyers. Kasi usually criminal cases lang. But actually that can help. So those are part of the things we're studying now, of really how to be there for Filipinos abroad.
I would think that the OWA also has funds to assist. How could you distinguish those being helped by the APN?
OWA takes care of the documented, sa amin yung undocumented.
I see. OWA only helps, so only the documented for OWA.
So, but there are two kinds of undocumented, to my knowledge, no one. One is when you get there, undocumented ka na, sinabi mo tourist, and
Or
then
yung
trabaho.
nag-expire ang kanilang
Or yung
papers.
nag-expire, kasi kung uwi naman kaagad, dapat covered yun ng kontrata nila, and then subsidiarily liable yung recruiter. But ang gagawin, ayaw umuwi, lumipat-lipat and everything. So, nagiging undocumented.
What happens in a jurisdiction where the person is documented and therefore would need OWA help, but there's no OWA presence in that embassy or consulate? The DFA could use the ATN as well, or
Yes.
ATN is really legally just for the undocumented?
Recently, with Administrator Hans Kakbak, it's been much more progressive. So before, if it's documented, and then they know the recruiter, they'll wait for the recruiter to pay. So in the meantime, ilan buwan nandun. So now, ina-advance na rin ng OWA. So the same thing with us. Dati, ang dami pang technicalities or pwede ba yung ATN dahil dito. Now we're trying to put a little bit, ease up on the regulations because it's easy to sort out who pays for what once they get home. But every single day that they spend is a day exposing them to danger talaga.
Thank you for that. I think we've discussed the issue of passports, we've discussed the Legal Assistance Fund, the assistance to nationals, and the need for shelters for which you could use the ATN funds. Thank you. Now, the Office of Undersecretary Tihangki, OWIR, yeah, that's where the CDU is. I understand that you have very few staff, and in the past years you hardly had any budget to get competent staff or to do your studies. May I know whether that was included in the NEP, or is it in a Tier 1 request which was rejected or disapproved?
Well,
Thank you.
Well, gratefully now, included in the NEP is the 36 million for CDU. Where is the CDU? Oh no, that's for OWIR Economic and APEC. But as far as CDU was concerned, I understand, Ethel, they were approved, right? 36.50.
I'm asking Undersecretary Tihangki, your office budget, OWIR.
Okay. Yes, our main budget of we had asked for Tier 1, 76 was approved. We needed an additional 40 for beefing up the economic research, economic cooperation, and statistics. And
That was what was not approved.
Yes, in red at 40 million there.
Madam Chair, that's very important to us and to beef up the office that deals with economics because we're doing a lot of road shows around the world with the economic and infrastructure team. We're always there at the beginning. In fact, sometimes it's us who breaks the ice. I mean, the DFA, the ambassadors or the undersecretaries or in foreign ministers meetings to ask them for some economic cooperation. But as soon as the agency gets the agreement, we're left out. Or we have a hard time monitoring. Pag may problema, balik sa amin. So we want to strengthen the office of Yusek Dondi, whoever occupies it, because we think we should be doing this in parallel. We're actually doing it now with the purchase of arms, so and military equipment. So the SND and the DFA have very, very good coordination, especially with the countries that sell arms. But with the other economic cooperation, it's really just because the cabinet is quite close now. But institutionally, there's still a lot that we can do.
I agree with you that we should strengthen our economic research and to really translate this research into operationalized information that. And you can share it with the other departments, with the Department of Trade, with the Department of Tourism, and we should use that. For example, was it, again, Ambassador Willier, I think, when he came to my office, told me when he went with the ASEAN ambassadors to Galicia in Spain, Vietnam had a consulate there, if I'm not mistaken, with 12 staff, and he had no one, right? And he was just comparing the Philippines, and that's Vietnam. Another aspect is, yeah, in short, what I'm saying is we could be left behind, and we are being left behind. The President wants us to be a manufacturing giant. It's a long way before we become that. Right now, Chinese exports, for example, of solar panels to the EU and to the US has tariffs. We should take advantage of that position because when we export from the Philippines, walang taripa. Perhaps research from the Economic Office of the DFA of all of those that the Chinese manufacturers are exporting to in the EU and US can be given to us, to the manufacturers here, and there are very few, and that could spur up an industry. China would have to go through the Philippines because pag sila diretso, may tariffs na pinapataw sa kanila. Something as simple as that, and it could spur an industry. Ako, yun lang alam ko because just for transparency, my son is a small entrepreneur in that field of business, so that's what I learned. So I think that division of the DFA is very important, but it's also important that we let research really be shared with the private sector and with the other agencies of government. Yes, Secretary.
Madam Chair, even in the side of labor in connection with the economic. So for example, China has big initiatives now in the Middle East, but their wages have gone up. Their income has gone up. So it's not always viable for them to send Chinese workers. So we have discussions with them whether they can use Filipino workers in the Middle East for their projects there, since they're there already and some of them don't have jobs. But again, it goes to personnel, point people, etc. So right now, we're doing it through coordination with the other departments, but given a little bit more resources, yung capability namin tataas. So.
Thank you. Undersecretary.
Yes, and if I may just add, because as we need to beef up the statistics, as you said, we must share information. The Secretary has been very demanding of our unit to increase statistical data availability. And one of the key points that you have raised last year, and the reason we included this also in the budget, is that we must know how many grants there are. And grants can come in many forms. As pointed out by the Secretary, 40 billion in soft loans. It's a mixed bag of loans, grants from China, Russia, and Japan. If you calculate it, it was 40 billion. It is the job really of the DFA to continue to gather the statistics, how much of this is implemented or utilized, because often if we don't keep track of the 24 billion pledge, which is a mixed bag.
It expires,
Yes,
and
yes.
We have to build capacity among those in the bureaucracy to actually fill up all the forms and do all the requirements. You're correct, and I think it's your division that should do that. For example, the Green Climate Fund, that's what I know. The $10 billion, by 2020 it should be $100 billion. Now, what's available is $10 billion. And who has availed of it and has proposals approved? Mongolia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, the Philippines, not one. And a little concept note was not even, was rejected, I mean almost rejected. So, and they've been reaching out to us. The head of the Green Climate Fund even came to the Philippines early this year to seek us out to say, why are you not applying? And there's an August, do you know that? 31, is it 31 or 30 in August? The last day of August is 31? 31. Deadline of $500 million. But that's for the world, not just for the Philippines. But they reached out to the Philippines. Why is anyone not applying for the $500 million for grant for climate-related projects. That's only what I know. And so I talked to the DNR, I tried to put it in my website, I know, to ask, we're not availing of $500 million, even just 1% of that, 1/10 of that, wala daw aplikante from the Philippines. So I don't know where to start to build capacity of our government agencies so that they can avail of that. So it would be helpful if you can tell us and give us an inventory of all grants and loans. Remember when Secretary Allen was still in the Senate, I defended the AIIB. We did. We sponsored it together. So my question is maybe not to you, but to NEDA. Have we actually availed of the Asian Infrastructure Bank, which is even more attractive in some of its terms than the ADB or the World Bank, because there are less than 1% loans. I remember in the interpellations that they asked me, anong diferensya, anong benepisyo? It's equal or less than the interest rate of ADB and World Bank. So have we availed of the AIIB? Maybe that's what I'm going to ask the NEDA during their budget hearing. So may I request, Undersecretary, if your secretary is demanding, I will be equally demanding. But this is for the good of your office and of the agencies, to just give us a matrix, a list of all grants that you know of, that you can research from different multilateral institutions, most countries, and what are the biases? Environmental grants, climate grants, transportation, health, ano yung grant, anong technical assistance in the form of the grants, and maybe low interest loans. There are zero interest loans or even just 1%, apart from those we already know. And maybe most important, maliban sa alam natin yung grant, how do we comply with all these numerous requirements? How do we build the capacity of our local governments even in accessing these grants? Let's say the development of Laguna Lake. Why you can actually access the Green Climate Fund to have a resilient, sustainable lake development plan for Laguna de Bay and its surrounding LGUs. Pag marunong lang tayo gumawa ng magandang form, ng magandang requirements. Ang Mongolia, nagtayo na sila ng Green Bank at yan ay natulungan dahil sa GCF. Yun. Kasi sila nakatutok. Oo. Tayo nga, ang daming pondo, kaya palagi pag sinatanong sa akin, sabi ko, gaalang ang dami na hindi pa nga magastos, lalo na sa labas, marami pa rin, hindi lang tayo nag-fill up at nagbibigay ng requirement. Yes. So, you leave it, I leave it to you when your deadline is, but the soonest would be really helpful if you could give us the list of all grant institutions all over the world and match it with what departments of government could be helped. And then maybe memo it from the SFA to the cabinet and the directors so that they know this is what you can do. Para hindi na nanghingi sa GAA, they can actually source it from outside.
Madam Chair, I agree totally with you. Although you're going to ask NEDA, we should be able to answer it. And I do know some of the answers, but we were removed from the NEDA board. But they're now discussing whether we'll be an observer or will be part of the... Yes. Yes, so... but let me agree with you totally on everything you've said here. Even the IPU, even the parliamentary friendship, you know, with an additional capacity, then whether it's an ambassador or from the Home Office, they could accompany the congressional delegation and be the one to do the follow-up, because ang dami niyo po nakakausap ng mga legislators, daming ideas or businessmen there, but you get back and you have to face the work legislation. Trabaho namin sana to follow that up. But kung kulang din kami sa tao na apektahan. Ma'am, can I take up two quick things in relation to that? No? One is the hardship post. So we do we have a slide kung saan? So
consider the hardship post.
Example is Iraq at saka Syria. Despite the fact that ISIS was there in the war, hindi umalis ang ating mga taga-DFA doon. And then there are more than 1,000 Filipinos there. And in fact, I'll tell you, not in public, how they've also helped us in the anti-terrorism. For example, not specifically that post. But napeg sa 5% yung kanilang hardship, 5% additional sa allowance, no? So kung allowance sila $1,000, it'll be 1,050.
Regular allowance.
So kung ma-increase man lang yun to 10 or 15, because it's the equivalent sa ating doctors, nurses, at teachers na mga hazard pay, ano. So may mga lugar talaga in the world na delikado. What are the other? Nairobi?
Even just for Iraq and Syria,
yes, that's
it's
a good
admirable
example,
how
yes.
you could give that to us as a proposal to adjust.
Yes.
Of course,
Yes.
Filipinos living in Iraq and Syria, I didn't even, it was
Yes.
not in my radar to
Then
think that
lastly, hindi umabot sa proposal na, but yung diplomatic security. So we're doing a study because just like economic intelligence, we should at least know the latest in geopolitics, what's happening there, here. Are there embassies where we have to beef up our security? Are there areas where delikado sa Pilipino na hindi enough na may warning lang tayo? No? And then, for example, Madam Chair, there are a lot of areas around the world where pinpointed saan nararadicalize ang mga foreigners, no? Whether they're British, they're Canadian, or Filipinos, no? But wala tayong provisions nga na may tao tayo na nagga-gather doon or nakikisama para malaman nga kung kala natin scholarships, yun pala nararadicalize na sila, no? So we'll submit a proposal on that. But the other examples are, of course, aside from Baghdad and Damascus, Tripoli, Abuja, Nairobi, no, are examples of the hardship post. But despite the fact that hardship charge saka 5% lang. Yes, and when we send people, they don't say no, they go. You know. Okay. So the total allowance for hardship is only 8.2 million pesos. So actually, if we
mean additional. Oh, that's
now the present 5%. So the
8 million additional, which is all in your net.
we were, sorry Madam Chair, my mistake. We were just asking for an additional 8.2 para may anap namin to meet the 5% or para maakyat? 5%. To just meet the 5%. To just meet the 5%, not even to increase. We're only asking for 8.2 million.
I think that's approved as of now. I mean, in short, I'm approving it.
Thank you very much.
Even this was disapproved.
Yes.
You've selected, you've designated the hardship posts, and all you need to do is to adjust it 5%. That's all.
Just to make the 5%,
Yeah,
8.2. If we adjust it to 10%, 16.4.
We approve that immediately.
Yes.
That I can
Thank
approve
you.
right
Thank
now
you for
without even thinking or finding out. Yes.
Thank you for making it easy for the hardship post.
I think they're very patriotic to be in those areas. Yeah.
Then, Madam Chair, just because this is also of interest to you and the rest of the Senate, at the end of the month, I'll be going to Busan, where there'll be an ASEAN-Korean cultural house, culture house, no? And usually, kalat-kalat yung kung saan yung pera, you get it from DTI or from tourism, no? And when the ambassador saw the list, no, I remember when you bring items or when you showcase yung ethnic na designs, no? So he showed me the list at sabi niya, sir, chairman pa naman tayo ng ASEAN, pero medyo hindi masyado maganda. So we talked to Kenneth and if he can give a chair or if he can purchase. So we requested 21 million for our cultural diplomacy. Ang binigay is 15. And in fact, the money doesn't have to be with DFA, but we think that, you know, we'll get much more back to the country if we also share our culture.
The head of our cultural diplomacy. It's now under Dondi.
Yes.
Oh, you said Dondi.
Then you have an
Okay.
asset.
Can you just give me the breakdown of your 15 million of your requested funds?
Yes, we'll submit that. It was a total of 36 and they stuck to 15 million last year, but we will give you the breakdown.
And siguro, Dondi, how we can tie it up with, for example, tourism, you know, how this showing our culture would let people go back to the Philippines.
I recall since many years ago, I've always asked the DFA, and I think, if I may say so myself, when I vice-chaired the budget of the DFA, and I mean chaired your budget and was vice chair of finance, it used to be zero budget, and you know that from in cultural diplomacy, but we put in a budget there every year. I don't know in the net now how much was put in, 15 million. In fact, the Venice Biennale, when it was born, our participation at least was first lodged in DFA, but eventually they had to transfer it to the NTCA. But the DFA, even if the funds is not directly lodged with you, has been very, very supportive, because the needs of the artists and the curators when they go to Italy. In fact, if I may cite, our post in Rome and our post in Milan have been very, very helpful whenever we do the annual participation in both the Arte and the Architecture Biennale. Ding Nolasco especially in...
With the permission of my secretary, just to update, based also on the House of Representatives pushing us to give more importance to cultural diplomacy and your own advocacy, they have upgraded the Cultural Diplomacy Unit to now form part of the Office of Public and Cultural Diplomacy. So please don't be surprised. Next year, whoever is Assistant Secretary for Public and Cultural Diplomacy will be overseeing the CDU, the Cultural Diplomacy Unit. However, in UWIR, we've always focused on both the political and economic units recognize the importance of cultural diplomacy as soft openers to both political and economic initiatives. So we have always been supportive of increasing the budget of cultural diplomacy, especially both on the political side, they need this as soft diplomacy. On the economic side, we need it as soft openers. Thank you.
I just have a note here on the non-release or non-claim of benefits for OFWs. Yes, end of service. This was, there's 114 million. Could I be from your admin and finance? Actually, way before Secretary Alan's time, there is a note here for the non-release or non-claim of benefits for OFWs, which amounts to 112 million. Is there such an amount? Who's handling this? Maybe the finance officer? And there's 114 million unaccounted for in the books of DFA, which was supposed to be for OFWs.
In an annual audit report, the Commission audit found 114 million unclaimed, unreleased end-of-service benefits for the account of OUMWA with the PNB. This amount comprised the principal of 112 million and the interest of 1.8. From 1996 to 2017, OMWA received a total of 1.1 billion. ESB, or yung end-of-service benefit remittances from Post, mostly from Riyadh and Jeddah. OMWA was able to release 1 billion of the total ESB remittances received. So the policy, pursuant to its mandate under the Migrant Workers and Overseas Act, to assist overseas Filipinos and nationals. DFA facilitates the release of the end-of-service and other financial benefits, including insurance, to the beneficiaries of deceased OFWs. It has been doing this since 1997. Under the Joint Manual Operation 2015, DFA, DOLE, DSWD, DOH, POEA, OWA, NESB, and other arising out of their action out of employer-employee relations fall within the jurisdiction. Didn't we amend this? Hindi ba ito yung in-attendan ko? na ito ba yung inattendan ko na we signed with the DOLE and amended. But anyway, Madam Chair, the OMWA endeavors to release 100% of the ESB received and exhaust all efforts to do so. These efforts include writing to the barangay captain of barangays where an heir may be residing, kasi hindi nga claim, Madam Chair, so we're trying to locate them. Or directly verifying records of local civil register pagka multiple claims or hindi namin malaman kung kanino bibigay. Coordination with the Philippine Statistic Authority to find out possible next of kin where the beneficiaries are not identified. Then requesting COMELEC records to find leads and paying for bus fares of beneficiaries. No? Earlier this year, OMWA personnel informally formed task force to trace the records of the OFWs who have unclaimed ESBs for 10 years back. They had to dig records from more than 10 years, including from PNB. Only records from 1999 forward were found, listing names of deceased OFWs and amounts. No more records before that were found. So OMWA sent a request to OCA to locate passport records of this to find the next of kin. OMWA processes the release of 50 claims every month. Production is reduced when OMWA ESB staff need to be deployed abroad to respond to crisis. The same staff kasi ma'am na nag-process na to, pag may mga crisis abroad, sila din yung pinapadala. So na-stop. Yung inattendan ko pala ma'am was Madam Chair, is nagkaroon ngayon ng MOA for the health insurance and health benefits naman ng OFWs. So there are ongoing directives of the President now for the departments in the Philippines to coordinate better. Sa abroad kasi, because of the embassy and the ambassador or congen, one country, one team, madali. Dito minsan, admittedly, nagtuturuan. But I had a discussion with Secretary Bello the other day, and then Secretary Bongo and other secretaries was there. We're planning to have a regular meeting only on OFWs, no? To be able to address their claims at a high-level interagency. So we'll give you a further report on this.
So to be able to move forward, I just wanted to summarize before we end the posts that we decided that you suggest we open and how much it would cost. So in case it is available for amendment, I do not promise, but I promise to do my best. And second, the list from Undersecretary Tihanki of all the grants, or whether technical or in kind, and low interest concessional loans from various multilateral institutions in other countries. And third, what's for sure is the hazard pay of 8.2 million. For sure there's an amendment for that. So I think we've discussed, I'd like to welcome, of course, to our hearing a good friend whose late mother was a dear, dear friend, okay, Secretary General Shahani. You're representing the UNACOM. Just kindly brief us again, what does the UNACOM coordinate in the Philippines, the UNESCO organization?
Hi ma'am, it's nice to see you. We basically, we have a budget of 19 million, and we basically try to inscribe as many World Heritage sites and intangible cultural heritage in the Philippines. So we're a liaison and advisory body. We connect directly with local government units and with UNESCO, but our goal really is to put the Philippines on the map culturally. So we want as many World Heritage sites and intangible cultural heritage to be inscribed. But we have to do this in collaboration with NCCA, where we work with them on the lists for the national inventory.
Is the Philippines we still have a seat in the board in UNESCO? I remember a few years ago, I forget the name of the ambassador in Paris, but was it? No, now it's Tess. Yeah. It used to be the Ilocana, the one from La Union.
I don't remember. Ortega.
Ortega. Because during her time, I helped her campaign for the seat in UNESCO. And you still have it, or it expired already?
It expires this year for the intangible cultural heritage.
Yes.
Yes.
And the last cultural heritage site that was granted the Philippines was Hamigitan.
Yes, ma'am.
No? And that was the last already.
Yes.
And I'm sure there are many others.
Yes,
that
we're
are
pushing
pending.
very hard.
And so it's the job of the UNACOM is to be able to link the UNESCO in Paris and our agencies here, our LGU, so that we can have our 1 foot in, so that we can have the declaration of more
We want
UNESCO
this money,
sites.
and my office is working very hard. We want Mount
I think you should
Mayon.
work with the former chair De Leon and the
June
current
De
chair
Leon.
Almario.
In fact, we were in NCCA yesterday, troubleshooting and talking about difficulties with the existing law and how we can work together as cultural agencies.
But there are already many LGUs and many areas in our country that want their areas to be declared as UNESCO sites. Some have even started. So
Yes.
find out from them. I don't have the list now
I have the list, ma'am.
of those
Yeah.
already that have
Expressed interest.
expressed interest, or Batanes for so long has it
19
pending?
years.
Yes.
Yes, it's
Has
been
it for so
long.
long.
Yes, ma'am.
It's masalimuot yung process. It's a tedious process, but I
Yes.
think. Anyway, so thank you very much. I think we there's never-ending discussion, but I'm always here to help, and Secretary Allen knows how to get in touch with me, and my office is just here to help. I mean, DFA is one of the agencies, the departments closest to my heart. I always like dealing with it. Our long budget hearing does not mean that I'm na pinapahirapan kayo. It's just that I have many questions because it's one of my greater interests. Yeah.
Madam Chair, the FSI is also present, the Foreign Service Institute. They do quality, they do great work, and the Assistant Secretary wanted me to tell you that if there's anything your office wants, kailangan nyo ng paper or their projects, they'll be happy to do it for
Maybe what
with no additional budget
Ayun
needed.
ang importante. Maybe what Director General can help us with is to give us just a soft copy of the list of updated studies and researches that you can share immediately with us. Baka mamaya pinapa-research ko, meron pala kayo. I-share na nyo yung inyong database of available researches on foreign policies, everything. And what other, apart from sharing your services and your researches, what kind of service can you do the Senate?
I think they can do roundtables.
We are the training arm of DFA, and Madam Chair, we have in fact been instrumental in updating the staff of the Senate on questions of protocol, social graces, and the like, and we continue to offer those services.
I think I'm one of the senators that always requests for protocol briefing for all my staff, and it goes from the chief of staff up to drivers and helpers, because I think everybody has a right to know the right protocol. That's very important. So I think for the whole Senate, I would request that for the whole Senate, so that all secretariat and senator staff could observe basic protocol. So thank you for that, and thank you for mentioning that. So I'll no longer prolong the hearing
Madam
unless...
Chair, just you summarized at the end the items of the budget where we need help. The other is the regional consular offices like the Laguna office. And then lastly, we requested 172 million for equipment, which ranges from chairs to projectors to computers for the home office. And for the foreign service post, 584 million, because it's all equipment they've been using for the last 10 years, but unfortunately we're given zero in both. So we don't expect a big amount, but if we can start retooling, even if we make it a 5-year or 10-year plan, makapag-umpisa man lang.
Can I request your finance to look at those 2016 that was carried over for this year? Okay. Let's say, just for the information, there's 293, almost 300 million that reverted to Treasury before your time. Last year, sayang naman, hindi nagamit. 300 million. Kung 8.2, pinapaglaban pa yun. Tapos may 293 million in 2016 that reverted to Treasury. But for this year, there is continuing appropriations of 3.2 billion. Maybe this has been already, I'm sure this has been already itemized, but kindly look into that if there's MOE or capital outlay for the 3.2 billion.
Madam Chair, by the time we get to the floor, we'll show you our utilization for this year.
Yes.
We're already attempting to to do it more efficiently. Then we can commit that next year we'll really spend the money and spend it wisely. Thank you.
I just cited the revert to treasury funds of last year just so that they know that there were unused funds.
Madam Chair, will just submit because the notes are getting longer now that they're hearing. But it's like a confessional now that you are forgiving us for our sins and not giving us penance. Dumadami yung mga notes. So with your permission, we'll just send you the documents. But basically, it's the MOE for home and abroad and for the regional consular offices. But we'll give you a breakdown, and as I said, we don't need the whole amount right away, but if we can start building up the DFA in the next few years, we much appreciate
The
it.
consular office or the passport office in Laguna is not funded under the NEP? It was in Tier 2.
There's zero for next year. But there's an executive
how
order.
much is the Calamba? If we are to fund that, how much would it cost?
Around 8 million, and then in 1 year, about 85 to 90% of that will be made up.
8 million for Calamba.
Yes.
Okay, that's done.
Yes.
So let's open Calamba, and then for the hazard post, the 8.2. There's a 50 million confidential fund for 2018. Is
Yes,
it the
Madam
first
Chair.
time that the FA has a confidential?
We requested both intelligence and confidential. It was all removed in 2014. But given terrorism and given for example, Madam Chair, that we're involved in the purchase of arms. So although we asked the other agencies like the DOF to help us in the terms and help the DND, if the DFA also doesn't have capability or knowledge or information. So, but we were told that they'd rather keep all of the intelligence funds with the armed services. So they granted us some confidential funds, but not...
It's not the first time that the FA has the confidential
Before
funds.
2014, we had both confidential
Confi
and
and
intel funds.
Before 2014.
Yes.
But this 50 was approved.
Yes.
And it's lodged.
We requested 100.
It's in your 2018
Yes,
net.
yes. The computation that I did, Madam Chair, so just looked at how many posts we have in the world. So then just put an amount every month if you have 100,000 or 50,000.
Are all posts given Confi and Intel funds? No, only selected.
As of now, there's none. From 2014 to now, there's none.
So this 50 will be divided among different posts?
It will go to the Home Office, then we'll decide how to do it. But I just, when we submitted it to DBM, we were just looking like if there are 100 places you want to use it, 1 million each is only $25,000 or $20,000. That's how we looked at it. But then we will get guidance from the OP of what the priority areas are. Basically in keeping Filipinos safe abroad and then keeping the ISIS from coming back to the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's been a two-way educational, mutually educational, enlightening meeting, hearing, Secretary Alan. So I'd like to thank the DFA family. Yes. So we approve the budget of DFA and its attached agencies, and we will see you in plenary. Yes, submitted to plenary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Very grateful. God bless.
The first that will be submitted because DOJ was deferred. So you're the buena mano, correct? Tama ba? See? Swerte.